All right, seller property disclosure advisory. We typically call this the SPDS because it used to be called the seller property disclosure statement, and it's been changed to the residential seller disclosure advisory, but it's essentially the same thing. So a seller is going to fill this out prior to putting the property on the market, or I would hope that they would have it. I have my clients, if you're a seller of mine, this is given to you as part of the listing paperwork. It has to be filled out prior to us going on the market so that as soon as we get an offer, I can shoot this over to the buyer's agent and we stay in compliance with the contract. Sometimes it's uploaded into MLS. And so if that's the case, if you're a buyer, I actually will shoot it over to you as part of the contract process. I usually send it over an email so you can review it separately, but then also send it over for signature at that time. When you sign it, you're basically just acknowledging that it's been given to you. You're not really agreeing to anything. You're just saying, okay, I acknowledge that this has been given. I acknowledge the disclosures in it. Now, if there's something of concern to you that you want to do further investigation on, you can do that during the inspection period. So don't let that kind of freak you out. Like if there's concern about something, let's say that the property had evidence of termites at some point, seller had it treated. That's pretty common in Arizona. If that's obviously we would have a termite inspection and we would determine whether the state of the home at that point and deal with it accordingly. But this is just basically an acknowledgement that you have received this document. So, again, seller fills all of this out. So, it's really important, that you disclose everything. If you're not sure if you should disclose it, then disclose it. There's really no harm in not disclosing something. There's a lot of harm if a buyer finds out that you withheld information from them that mattered in the grand scheme of things. So you have to complete it yourself if you're the seller. Answer the questions as truthfully and honestly as you possibly can. If you don't understand or know what a question is, then there's not much I can do as an agent to help you with it. You have to fill it out on your own. I've never occupied the property. I don't really know. But, and from a buyer's perspective, it should be something that's reviewed, carefully. Make sure that like you're really looking at it to ensure that you walk away feeling like they've disclosed as much as they could. If you're purchasing a property that's owned by an investor, they typically don't fill these out super completely. They don't have a ton of knowledge about the property. They do have some knowledge. They should fill out something. Property address. It's not like they don't know that. There are certain things that they should go ahead and fill out, but that doesn't mean that they're going to know a ton about the property. So you're not going to get as complete one as if it's an owner occupied property. But it's 7 pages and it just asks a lot of, very detailed questions. What the property address is on leased land. That's pretty common. We see some of that in Scottsdale, not in Northwest Phoenix. So there's just parts that there's certain things that are unique to each part of Maricopa County, which is where I typically work. So it's important that they fill it out to the best of their ability. Was it owner occupied? Did you use it as a rental? If it's vacant, how long has it been vacant? How long was it a rental? If there's a current tenant in there, when does that lease expire? All of that needs to be disclosed to the buyer. If there's deposits, things like that, like if you're using it as a rental property, and it's not something where, if the next homeowner is going to take over that lease, then they need to know what they're inheriting. Is the owner a legal resident in the United States or not? Does FERPTA apply to them? What year was the property built? HOA, it's going to ask you a lot of HOA questions. So there's 3 different documents that are filled out prior to listing. The SPDS, the MLS data input form, that's the form that I use to input everything into MLS, and then the HOA addendum. The same information is on all 3 of those documents regarding the HOA and a couple other things, but they go to different places and they are part of different parts of the sale of the home. And so unfortunately, you can't just put it down in one place. It has to go to 3 different places because those documents are used in 3 different ways. So it's going to ask you questions regarding, whether it's in an HOA, if it's on a sewer, what services are provided to the property. So water, electric, are there special assessments for that? Or does the HOA cover those things? A lot of times in townhome communities, they'll have a blanket insurance policy that will typically cover the roof, and they may cover water and sewer and maybe trash, but then, you're responsible for some other things. So every HOA is different on what their dues cover. Are there any liens against the property that you're aware of? Anything around those lines, that's all going to be on this page. And then you move on to, are you aware of any homeowners insurance claims that have been filed against the property? The seller would have to disclose that. If there have been, again, we should also get a copy of the homeowners, what's called the letter of experience or claims history letter from the insurance company. Sometimes it's called a clue report. That should also be given, but if they've filed an insurance claim, it should be listed here and explain what was, why was an insurance claim filed against the property? Was there hail damage with the roof and the insurance company handled the roof replacement or something along those lines? Then we get into roof and structural things. So do you know how old the roof is? Are you aware of any leaks or anything along those lines? Is there a roof warranty? So it goes through all of these things. Wood infestation. Are you aware of any termites? Anything like that? And, AC unit. How old is the AC unit? How old is the heater? How old is is it electric? Is it gas? Plumbing? Or some people don't know what kind of plumbing they have in their home because the home's too old. They weren't there when it was built, so they don't know any information around the swimming pool. All of these boxes are checked out and it's filled out to the best of the ability of the seller. As a buyer, it's your responsibility to go through, read it carefully. If you have questions, let me know so that I can go to the listing agent and try to get clarification from the seller. We do the best that we can regarding that. If not, then, we'll do what we can to try to get the answer from them. So, and then because we're starting to see a lot of investment properties, a lot of quote flips or work that's being done at the property, it's really important that they just changed this at the beginning of February of 23 so that any work that's done at the property, we want to make sure it's done properly and done. If it's under $1,000, it's considered, as long as it's done in what's called a quote workmanlike manner, it's fine. Any work over $1,000 should have been performed by a licensed contractor. And so that's called out right here in this section. If a contractor's license is required for work performed on a property unless an aggregate contract price, including labor and material, is less than $1,000. So if you're just doing little handyman things around the house, that's fine. You can do those yourself. If it's a substantially more expensive job, like let's say you need to get your water heater replaced or something along those lines, then I would recommend having a licensed plumber do that. And in that case, you would just write that down here, what the contractor's name was, what their license number was, and what they did. So if you had your water heater replaced, you'd write who the plumber was, you write their license number, and you write the scope of work, what they did. They just replaced their water heater. Same thing for a roof or something like that. If you had the property painted, you would write who painted the property for you, something along those lines. Anything that you had done by somebody else. And if it was over $1,000, you want to just make sure that you had a licensed contractor doing it and you disclose it here. Cable, this is all around, just various things like who provides the cable in your area. Is it Cox? Do you have DirecTV, Dish Network, something along those lines? Electricity, are the fire services public or is there private? Typically we see public for most things, but there are certain areas that have their own private fire, and police response, or ambulance, I should say, probably not police. Garbage collection, who picks up the garbage? Is it a private water company or is it a public water company? Do you have hauled water in? Do you have a private well? All of those things are all included here. The post is your mail delivered to the property or is it a mailbox bank or, is it not even delivered? You have to go all the way to the post office to get your mail. If you're in a cluster mailbox, what's the mailbox number? What's the location? That all needs to be put on the SPDS. Again, sewer treatment, all of that when it comes to, are you connected to a sewer, or are you connected to a septic system that requires its own inspection period? Any environmental issues that you're aware of, any issues, if you're noticing that there's standing water after it rains and it's still there 3 or 4 days later, you should probably disclose that there's some drainage issues on your side yard or something, anything like that. That's all this document is to kind of let buyers have a full, clear picture of what they're getting into when they're purchasing the home. Is the property on a Superfund site or a wetlands area, or is it open to natural spaces? I mean, if you back up to a mountain, for example, are you allowed to put a fence back there or not? And I mean, if you can't, then what does that mean? What kind of critters are getting back there? Whatever. It's for informational purposes, so that the buyer feels that they're getting a full picture of what your home is like and what they're purchasing, so that they can go in not feeling like the seller was trying to hide something from them that was wrong with the property. So at the end of this, the buyer is just initialing the bottom of every single page. Seller signs it when they fill it out. And then the buyer will sign it upon receipt. And again, like I said, this is you're just acknowledging that you've received the document and that you've reviewed it. Any issues of concern you can handle during your inspection period to ensure that any concerns that you have are addressed and handled appropriately, so that you're comfortable with the home that you're purchasing.